Thank you for tuning into another episode of Leaders Lane. Today's guest is Joelle Kaufman. She's a powerhouse executive coach and CEO of GTM Flow. With over 25 years scaling venture-backed tech companies to exits and high valuations, Joelle now coaches leaders at OpenAI, Vault, and beyond, helping them shift from tactical doers to strategic drivers. Her signature method, the Curveball Method, helps high-performing leaders navigate growth, pressure, and chaos with clarity and purpose. Two things I'm really big on. And blending strategy with humanity, Joelle's approach is deeply informed by her own journey through a sudden cancer diagnosis, which led her to write the best-selling book, Crushing the Cancer Curveball. So get ready for a provocative conversation, and I'll welcome her now. Joelle, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Monica. It's great to be here.
Likewise. So tell me, where did your leadership journey begin?
So I think I've always been very accomplishment driven, and it turns out you can accomplish a lot more with other people than you can usually do on your own. So I was pretty young when I figured that out. And I'd say my leadership journey probably began in high school, and I was not a popular kid. I mean, I was a dork, a dweeb, a nerd, whatever word you want to use. I wasn't cool. And something was happening at my high school, and it had happened every year where a student would die in a horrible drunk driving accident. Every year we were losing a student, and we weren't a big school. So it's horrible. And I read in a magazine called Reader's Digest. I don't know if you remember Reader's Digest. Okay.
Yes, I do.
So I was reading Reader's Digest about this organization called SAD, Students Against Driving Drunk. And the whole concept of SAD was not you shouldn't drink and that you shouldn't drive, but that you should have a contract with the people who love you that basically says anytime, any place, if it's not safe for you to drive, I'll pick you up. No questions asked. That's it. That's the whole concept, right? And I said, my school could use one of these. And I started getting other kids excited about it because I was like, it's not anti-partying. It's not anti-fun. It's pro staying alive. And I started to build a coalition. And I learned about the power of listening, of empathy. I mean, this is a very sensitive topic. And we planned a whole big kickoff assembly for the whole high school. And probably a week before it, senior died in a drunk driving car accident, which is horrible. And I still remember his girlfriend was in my homeroom, and that's how she found out. And I mean, it was terrible. And we had to figure out, how do we navigate this? And again, not something you can do alone. You need lots of input. The parents, the school. Do we want to put it on hold? What do we want to do here? We don't want to seem like we're exploiting this tragedy. And we had an expert who was from SAD, and they helped us, and we created it almost in a memorial style, but it was a really powerful lesson in leadership and lesson in curveballs. And by the time I graduated high school, it was one of the biggest clubs. Again, this isn't a club that does anything other than join it, sign the contract with your parents. The number of drunk driving deaths went down dramatically. I believe that club still exists. And, when I had children of my own, the lessons I learned there became part of our dialogue with our kids. And of course, our kids grow up in the time of ride shares. So you can call us or you can call Uber, Lyft. I don't care. Don't drive. But that was probably my first, and I had a number of other ones when I was, still pretty young. So by the time I was a working person, I'd led hundreds of people and seen lots of odd curveballs that come up when you're leading people.
I love that, first of all. And I think, wow, what an experience to go through at such a young age too, and then to create some sort of a change that then lasts generations too. It's really beautiful that you saw that opportunity, and the fact that you also acted on it. Like, I imagine when you read Reader's Digest, did you think, I could be the change? Not in that, maybe those words. And
me and Maya Angelou. No, I read it and I said, this makes sense. Actually, it seemed so simple. And it's interesting because one of the leadership techniques I used for all my time leading in venture-backed startups and every one of my clients and in my courses, I encourage this, is something called the first day memo. Sounds ridiculous. But Monica, how many times have you started a job and you show up and people kind of look at you like, what are we going to do with you today?
Yeah.
Right? Which I was like, this is insane. This is like a total waste of time. And so, but the concept of the first day memo came from the concept of write your intention down. So we can talk about first day memos later if you want, but SAD was this really simple concept of write something down. This wasn't legislative. We weren't, putting rings on and saying we would never ever do anything stupid that teenagers do. It was simply saying, I want to know it's safe for me to call for a ride from somebody who is also safe and who is, what should we say, not intoxicated. I think that's kind of the right move there, is not intoxicated. So anyway, I had this idea. And again, I wasn't popular. I had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
It's like, no one's going to not invite me to the parties. I'm not going anyway. So it's okay. Like, I wasn't sad about it. It was high school. Not many people want to go back. Exactly. And so it's okay. But this idea of something simple, and could something so simple save a life? And I wouldn't be saving the life because I wasn't the person they were going to call. And I think it does save lives. And I think writing things down and making your intentions clear and having a conversation when you're not in crisis is helping you prepare for situations that come up. And they come up.
Yeah.
Curveballs.
Totally. I mean, I think we can all just take a moment and just go, okay, what curveballs have I been thrown? And they fly at us, left, right, and center at the best of times. And like I mentioned in the introduction, I'm a huge believer, like as part of my personal branding business, my values are purpose, clarity, and power. And since I started my business, I've believed in them because I feel like when you have purpose and intention, then you can move with clarity. And then that has a powerful effect on whatever you're working towards.
Love that.
And so I very much resonate with the intention piece so much. And so tell me, how has then the intention piece played a role in your working career?
Well, I believe that you need to have clarity of goal and clarity of role for any team to work. So your goal is your intention. Now, your intention can be bigger than the goal you want at work. For example, you could have an intention about being a voracious learner, and you bring that to work. And then your goals personally are about what you're going to learn. Whereas your goals for the company might be to make your customers incredibly active advocates for your solution because you've made their careers better because of what you do. But your intention is to always be learning, to always be curious. That's what you've committed to. So I think those are complementary goals, your personal goal for how you want to be. Monica, I don't think many people think about that. It's a big part of what I do with my clients is help them see, and these are all hyper successful people, help people see that, okay, everything you've just kind of done, you being you, has gotten you where you are. It's great. It also is what's holding you back. So let's look at it and appreciate it. Be gratitude. It's pretty cool that I started this organization in 1986 and it's had a big, that's cool. Okay, great. And sometimes you got to get behind somebody else's idea, not your idea. And if you always has to be your idea, that's self-limiting. Okay, so clarity of goal and clarity of role is also really important. And this is an area where I think leaders get uncomfortable, which is I need to know what position on the team you're playing in this particular game. Tomorrow, I might need you to take on a different position, but I need to be explicit. And by the way, if you want to be in a different position, you need to be explicit. So one of the conversations I had with people who come work for me, I'd explain to them clarity of goal. It will be very clear what we are trying to do. And you will use that to prioritize, and clarity of role. And by the way, you'll have extreme autonomy in execution. As long as it's legal, considerate, pretty much that's it. Legal, considerate. You can do it however you want and whenever you want. I had a woman who worked for me for years. Her best working hours were 1 to 3 in the morning. People would say, why isn't she here at 10 a.m.? I'm like, because she works. She's like a vampire. I don't know. But I don't care. If you're not waiting for her and the work's getting done, I don't care. But extreme clarity of role means if there's something you want to try, for example, the person I'm talking about is incredibly creative and effective at events. She said, I'd like to expand from that. I said, great. You hit it out of the park on events because that's what I need you to do. and I'll open up anything else you want to do and give you an opportunity to try it. And I did. And she did. And then she came back to me and goes, I really think I like events. I said, yeah, you're great. Lean into your strength. But you got to have clarity of role, right? You can't have everybody thinking, well, that's my job. Well, that's my job. Well, that's mine to own. I'm driving. Like, that's internal conflict. And that's keeping you from serving your customers and from competing in the marketplace. And you know, when you have that, where you need to look? In the mirror, because you as the leader have not clarified the roles. Because sometimes people get upset.
I mean, that's so powerful what you're saying. And I love that you did that with this person, because to me, that just shows leadership from your part. And two, it's like allowing that person, you know, to step into, connect to themselves too, because, you know, sometimes we do things and then we're like, have this inkling, we're like, I want to go in this direction. And sometimes it's just trying that direction, realizing that I actually don't want to do that. But without that exploration, you never know. So I love that approach. And I love that you allow people to work at any time that they want, 1 till 3. I'm also a huge believer in that, because I feel like there are so many incredible people that perform at, you know, great levels. And if you give them the space to do the work in the time that they know that they're at their best, I don't think, you know, being necessarily restrictive unless there's a particular reason for that. You know, I think so many people can flourish that way.
Well, and it's treating people like adults, right? Like,
Yes.
there are times I need everybody together because we have a team meeting. You know, companies have been dealing with people being based all over the world since globalization has started. And I'm pretty sure that was over 100 years ago. So, you know, we can actually do things. It's hard. I mean, when I've had teams in India or in Israel or in Europe, and I'm in California, you know, we joked before we started, we're recording this. It's 2:00 in the afternoon for you, I think. It's 9:30 at night for me. So we've got to be flexible. We've got to be creative. But if I'm going to be on a call at 9:00 at night, maybe I can take 4:00 in the afternoon and do something else that isn't work related. And who cares, as long as the work's getting done. So you have to be clear about what are the values of your team and what are the times when we do need everybody together. And then just get it done, get the stuff done, and be available to each other.
Yeah, that's very powerful. And it's such simple advice or maybe wisdom, you know, but often the simple stuff gets overlooked sometimes because it's like, oh, that can't be the right way. It's too simple to do it like that.
Well, and Monica, people, you know, we like people to be happy with us. We don't want to upset someone. We don't want to be mad. I have a client right now, and I was talking with people that work with him, and they're talking about how significant these series of issues are. And I've been talking with the client, and, you know, he's totally open to working with a coach, and he's a perfectly lovely, brilliant human. And I turned to the people who were talking to me, his colleagues, and I said, does anyone told him the extent of the issues? Like, in writing? Again, write it down. It's more precise. And they kind of all looked at me and, no, well, I don't think he knows. And frankly, there's no chance he can improve on them if he doesn't know what they are. So people are afraid, I don't want to upset Monica and tell her that she's not the project leader for this, or that what I really need her to do is write some great copy. And somebody else is actually coming up with the strategic direction. That doesn't mean you're not in the room and you can't have input, but, you know, Jack or Jamie is the one who's going to, we just don't want to upset them. We just say, oh, it'll all just work out. No, it doesn't just work out. So just tell people, this time, I really need you to knock it, just kill it on this part. And if you're disappointed, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I'm curious on that point because I agree with what you're saying. And I also understand that some people have, what do you call it, reservations or resistance about, I don't want to say confrontational because it doesn't mean that you are being confrontational, but as in voicing those matters to other people. And I know as a leader, that's part of the job description, essentially. You need to know how to communicate. So you've worked with so many different leaders. How do you support people that face challenges like that?
There's a couple things. So we're naturally pain avoidant. If you're not pain avoidant, something's wrong with you. Okay? So first off, cut yourself a break. It's okay to be pain avoidant. that doesn't mean we're not going to do the hard thing. We're just going to recognize that nobody really likes disappointing somebody. Nobody should like firing somebody. Nobody likes giving a bad performance review. Nobody wants someone crying or yelling in their office. Like, no one. But this is kind of one of my superpowers. We got to reframe it. No one also likes making mistakes that nobody tells them they're making. Nobody likes people avoiding them because something they're doing is annoying them and no one would tell them. It's why we thank people when they tell us we have lettuce in our teeth.
I know, I would so much rather just be told.
Everybody would rather be told. So while you're avoiding pain, they want to be told because they don't want to keep doing it. The art form, Monica, is learning how they need to hear it and knowing how to give them the psychological safety to say, hey, you're really great. You do this branding strategy, personal branding. It's amazing. You have such a clear intention. I love it. And when you do whatever it is, it's actually getting in the way of your own effectiveness. And I want to help you be as awesome as you can be. So here are some examples, specificity. Let's talk about why that might be happening and how I can support you in trying on a different way of engaging.
Yeah.
Right? But we've got to know how you need to hear it. We have to become master communication decoders because that is the tool of leadership. It's all about communication.
I completely agree with you. And I feel like this transcends just the business leadership space. I feel like this is such an interpersonal thing as well, where when we can learn or at least understand how the person in front of us will best receive this message, not because we're placating to them, it's just that then they can hear it and it can be a conversation rather than a individual dialogue of you did this or something like that. I feel like it just builds a much more connected and beautiful relationship, whatever type of relationship that is.
So one of the most amazing things of my cancer journey that relates to that, right? I've managed hundreds of people, maybe thousands. I stopped counting, depending on if you count the people who work for people who work for me, who work for people who work for me, like a lot of people.
Yeah.
The number of people who wanted to reach out in support, in love, in care, who are people I only worked with. They're not people that I socialize with, that we've gone away together. They're my work friends, but often not my peers. I mean, my peers were great too, don't get me wrong. But it's part of what made that one of the happiest years of my life, is to be seen and to know that people who didn't necessarily work for me directly were impacted by me and wish me well. I mean, that's wonderful. And, I don't wish cancer on anybody, but I wish everyone that kind of moment.
I do want to ask you about your cancer journey because I feel like that is one of your curveballs. So could you tell me, where were you when this happened?
Well, the question is actually which this. So I'm a 42-year intergenerational cancer survivor. So my first this was I was 13, sitting in my family's living room when my parents told me my mother needed to go have surgery, that they thought it was breast cancer. She was 36. She was in phenomenal health. And I was like, this isn't supposed to happen. Like this is an old person's disease. It's not an old person's disease. But to answer and then my sister when she was 29, and I think I was the 12th of when we get through it. By the way, my mother, I want everyone to know, my mother is 43 years a survivor. She's awesome. My sister is over 20 years a survivor. She's awesome. I'm in a very blessed family. We have an issue with cancer, but we tend to live through it. And so I feel very blessed. Frankly, Monica, I was sitting right here. I was on a Zoom call. I was working and the phone rang, and it was my breast surgeon because I was supposed to have a prophylactic mastectomy the next day. And so I see the number. I'd had the biopsy. I'm like, well, I gotta put you guys on mute. And then I take the call and I'm just looking at the phone. And then I believe it was a string of expletives because I was like, you have got to be kidding me, because it's like, it's the next day. I was going to take care of this the next day.
Yeah.
And then you have the guilt. Should I have done this years ago? My God, what if it's advanced? Am I going to die? Like all these things. And if you happen to be a fast thinker, I'm in that category, they all come very, 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 very quickly. right? Meanwhile, I'm still on a Zoom.
It's like a movie. Yeah, go
Totally.
on.
I'm like, I need to drop off this call right now, guys. I will update you on why, but I need to go. And they were all very kind. They're like, oh, and I'm sitting there saying, now what? I know what the now what is. I've been through this enough. But you have this moment where this feels surreal. Like this, I'm looking at this person who just got this phone call, but this isn't me. This is some movie, some television series, but it's not. And that's where I was sitting. And, I knew what to do. And I feel very lucky, very blessed. The thing about cancer is the first time you ever see it in your life, it's very disorienting. It's very destabilizing. By the second, third, fourth time, you're like, oh, it's you again. So you're still got the fear and the guilt. I mean, there's still the emotions. But my first thing after the string of expletives was, am I having surgery tomorrow? She said, no, we don't do that with your kind of tumor. That's new. Do you have an oncologist to recommend? So many people, Monica, don't know that that's the next question, because who has an oncologist?
Yeah.
If you don't have cancer, you don't have an oncologist in your life. And if you live where I do, where there's lots of choices, I wanted a breast cancer oncologist. Now, there's a lot of people who live in areas where there's an oncologist. They're great too. They're like all good. But, as specialized an oncologist to your disease, better. Yeah. But I knew that was the first question.
So I'm listening to this and I know that you've shared your process and you seem so, I guess you're saying you've had experience with it, but you seem so calm. So then after this initial response, what was the trajectory? Did you experience any fear? Were you scared? Were you apprehensive?
Sure. I mean, the first thing, and this is part of why I wrote the book, the first thing you think is, am I going to die? Because cancer is deadly. The vast majority of cancer diagnoses are not, but that doesn't mean yours is not. Now, I knew I'd been scanned in June, nothing there. I'd had a surgery in October, nothing there. It wasn't huge. It was 9 millimeters, but it was touching a lymph node. And I was like, God, if this thing kills me because I waited too long, I'm going to be so mad at myself. And I mean, I have 3 kids. I have a loving husband. I got a lot of living still to come. Yeah. And I have a good friend who lost her battle with cancer at 51, and it's not fair. And she was great. And not that only bad people should die of, 51's too young. Yeah. And so, and she left 3 kids and a loving husband. And so, of course you have those fears. And anytime you see a curveball, especially a curveball of that magnitude, a curveball that could kill you, actually kill you. Like I've seen curveballs that could kill our business. Those are pretty bad too. Yeah. But, you have to use a process. You have to have an approach. And that's the whole point of the curveball method. But you have to have an approach. And the first part of the approach is you've got to catch yourself and get out of the reactive state. The easiest way to do it is take 3 box breaths, which is 4 breaths in, hold, 4 breaths out, hold, go round. This is what they teach fighter pilots, right? This is how you cool that fight or flight response, that fear response. Because as my surgeon says, cancer is only urgent because you know about it. Right? My kind of cancer, which was very aggressive, still isn't growing that fast. Now, there are certain types of cancers that are, and the doctors respond differently. They'll get you in the next day if it's leukemia or lymphoma or whatever. But breast cancer, you actually have some time. So you got to take a deep breath. And then in your approach, you've got to say, what am I seeing? Okay, what's the pathology? What are the list of questions I need to know to figure out how to swing this bat? I didn't ask to be in this particular game. I didn't want to be in this batter box, but I'm here. And that's the pitch. And one of the things that's important in life, Monica, is we never get to choose the pitch. We only get to choose the swing. But we can also choose how we practice. Now, life had given me lots of practice in this. I'd had lots of biopsies. I'd been through it with multiple family members. And so I took my breaths. I asked my sister-in-law, who was here for my surgery, to come upstairs. She's a doctor and a cancer survivor. And I said, so the biopsy came back positive. And she said, I'm so sorry. I said, me too. There's like 200 or 300 people who think I'm having surgery tomorrow, including my children and my husband, who I need to figure out how to tell before I know anything about the plan. And by the way, we have to cancel the party tonight. That's my bye-bye boobies party. We have to, without telling everybody, I ended up having to tell everybody. But She's like, okay, just make a list of all the things you have to do and all the questions you have. I'll just take notes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we started. And we ended up looking at the things to do. What could she do? What did I have to do? Put them in order because there's a sequence of how things were going to go out, because I wanted my children and my husband to hear from me,
Mm-hmm.
but I kind of needed to tell 300 people that I wasn't having surgery.
Yeah.
So, and I needed to find an oncologist.
Mm-hmm.
So we started a plan, and that started to be the approach. And then in the approach was, how am I going to communicate? Again, communication is the one thing we control. And so when I told the 300 people, I sent an email. I said, the universe flipped me the bird today. This is what happened. This is the diagnosis. I do not need links to trials or stories. I actually don't need to hear stories. This is the same exact type of breast cancer my mother and sister had. So I have a built-in support group. Yay. And I do need an oncologist, and I need your love and kindness, but I also need you not to ask us for updates. So I'm going to use Caring Bridge, which is a free healthcare blogging site, and I'll put updates there. Here's the link. You can follow it. You'll get alerted in your email and your app and whatever else, but it's a real drag to have to tell people things over and over again. So I'm going to put it all there. And thank you. Thank you for your love and support. And people sent me back, I'm so sorry. But many, many people said, thank you for being so clear. It's like, yes, we will need help with meals. I don't know the plan yet, so I don't know. There will be things we ask you to do, but I don't know yet. So thank you for the intention. Stay tuned. But I just kind of gave people guides about how to best support us. And they became, I call it the dugout. They became the dugout. They were doing different things and cheering and helping, and all of the leadership skills I'd used for 25 years, I was now using for my cancer. I was coordinating with the various doctors. I was coordinating with my friends. Now, I want to be clear. I didn't do that alone, because we never do it alone. My best friend is an organizational genius. Jessica handled the meal plan, the driving, the celebrations. My husband was wonderful and caring and supportive. I got a therapist right away who specializes. She's a psycho-oncologist and she specializes in it. So I'm putting together a team, and I am giving everybody the autonomy of execution. Go do your thing. Heather came with my husband and I to my first appointment. But you asked about fear. The first thing I got to do after I got my diagnosis was I needed a PET scan, because they wanted to see had it spread. That's like the longest 48 hours of your life. And I was lucky that it was only 48 hours. For some people, it's a couple of weeks where if this is localized, 93, 99, depending on your type of tumor, % of the time, you're going to beat it.
Yeah.
And if it's spread, ultimately, it's probably going to kill you. Now, the duration of how long you have with that has actually gotten much, much longer, because they've made incredible progress. But that 48 hours, okay, I have a diagnosis. As you saw with the story of what I did in high school, I'm pretty good at mobilizing people. I'm pretty good at negotiating. Yeah. So when I called, she said, you need a PET scan. I called. They said, well, we can get you in a couple of weeks, whatever. I said, is there any place else within 100 miles that does PET scans? She said, 100 miles. I said, I don't care. I will drive. So she looks in their network. She goes, actually, San Francisco can do it on Wednesday. It was Monday. I'm like, sold. Just sold. I'm going to go to that. Because you have to ask the question. If they say we can't, you can say, well, what are the constraints?
Yeah.
Location, time, whatever. Let's get this done. Because the sooner I know whether or not this thing is spread, the better I can figure out my approach. I was very lucky, Monica. It hadn't spread.
Yeah, what a journey. I feel like your process and it's almost like I can see it unfolding in your mind as you share it. And I think what I really loved was we touched on clarity before, but where you spoke about how the people that you sent out an email to, they said, thank you for being so clear. And I think that is such a simple thing that we can just apply in everyday life, and particularly when we're going through hard situations, because a lot of the times the people around us, our loved ones, they do want to help, and sometimes they may not help in the way that we want it if we're not clear, and they're just trying their best. And I thought that was just such a beautiful example for our listeners to just embody and put into their little pocket and pull it out whenever they need something like that. I've never heard someone else doing that in that
Thank you.
way. And I think it's such a lovely approach, and it allows you the space to do what you need to look after yourself. So as a leader, you know, that's an incredible thing. But just as a human dealing with a diagnosis, it's as well exactly what you needed.
And when you are diagnosed, you are suddenly a leader. You are the leader of your treatment journey, whether or not you wanted to be or not.
Yeah.
I just had, besides the cancer experience, many, many years of leadership experience where I said, okay, let me make this easy. And I even wrote a whole chapter in the book on things you can do. Like I tell people, you're going to know somebody going through cancer. That's statistically 100%. Chapter 16 of the book gives you a laundry list of things you can offer to do when they're ready, right? In the very beginning, when they're telling you, basically what they want to hear is, I love you and I'm here for whatever you need. And then, you know, I've had people say to me, well, my loved one lives 3 states over. I mean, Australia is really big too, right? They live far away. Like, okay, that's really hard. Ask them if they would like you to have a meal sent from their favorite restaurant. Right? I'm like, oh my God. Like we live in a time where you can do that.
Totally. Yeah. Tell me, in writing the book, what would you say personally, what was the greatest thing that you got out from writing that?
So because I didn't want the book to be the Joelle story, like it is my story, but I think my story is not all that interesting. It's common. So I went out and interviewed about 25 different women. Some of them I'm related to, but most of them I was not. And the thing that was most profound is I've always felt I would never choose cancer. I would never choose it for my mother, my sister, for anyone I love. I would never choose it for anyone I know. Okay. So you should do everything you can to avoid getting cancer. And in 25 out of 25 cases, including my own, their lives were richer and better afterwards. Now, I wish for all of us that we could have the clarity, the sense of purpose, the sense of connection that you get by going through a major health crisis without the health crisis.
Yeah.
But even the people who I talked to that were stage 4 and it was a much more advanced disease. There's a woman I talk about in the book. Her name is Cindy, and she was diagnosed at 37 with stage 4 metastatic disease, 3 kids. And she said, well, first off, my tumor has responded to treatment. So I have no evidence of disease right now, which is terrific. And I've always wanted to take my 3 kids to all 50 states. And they're not wealthy people. This is, you know, in the United States, I assume your listeners are global. The United States is huge, huge. And so that's going to require airplanes. And so she said, I always wanted to do it, but I didn't ever start until I got my diagnosis. And now, 4 years post-diagnosis, I think they've seen half. Like she's on it. And they're doing it. And she basically like, we're going on a vacation. Where are we going? Well, where the flights work. And, you know, I talked to her recently and she said, this is what I use, whatever our extra money for is we travel and we make memories and experiences and I'm going to keep doing it. And that's beautiful. And so it was so profound that everyone was mad about the cancer. Nobody was really pleased about that.
For sure.
But everybody felt like their lives had expanded and grown. And I know in my family, when I was 13, my sister was 10, it brought us much closer. It brought us closer as a family unit, the 4 of us. And my dad likes to say, you know, steel is forged with heat. You get stronger, but you also learn it's okay to be vulnerable. When people tell me, who should I tell about my cancer? I'm like, basically everyone. If you can, because you never know where support's going to come from. So I'll tell you 2 quick stories on that. For me, I'm saying I need an oncologist and a woman I went to business school with, and we were like casual acquaintances. She's like, hey, I have a really good friend who's a senior executive at UCSF. Can I ask her? I said, of course. My sister also had a connection. Everything started leading towards my UCSF team, but it was that person and this other person that also didn't know me, friend of my sister's, that brought it together and actually brought together just the world-class team I owe my life to. When another woman in the book, Alicia, was diagnosed, her kids, I think, were 4 and 6. I mean, they were young, maybe 6 and 8, young. She's a single mom. She said, I remember sitting there and saying, what's going to happen to my kids? My parents are a little bit older. or a lot older. My brother lives another state over. These are big states, like Montana, Wyoming, 12 hours of driving.
Yeah.
She's like, what's going to happen to my kids? And she told people what was going on, and she gets a phone call from someone she is not friends with.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, but they're involved in education. They knew her kids. And they said, we know we don't know you well, but we know your kids well. We've raised our children. And if God forbid something would happen to you, we'd love you to consider us as the people who will raise your children in this community. You could literally see the load lighten because that's what she wanted, right?
Yeah.
This doesn't happen without the curveball.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's so many of them, Monica. And when you get past the being scared and fearful and angry, like people get angry that they got cancer. Like, I had plans. Like, this is not what I wanted to be doing, because it's not. When you process that and then you see what good is coming into your life, if you're open to it, there's a lot of good. And I find that's the case. That's why I called it crushing the cancer curveball. Curveballs, I actually did an analysis on the World Series last year. Now, most of the home runs, they're fastballs, but most of the hits are curveballs, right? So, or off-speed pitches. I'm using curveballs broadly, but pitches that are not fastballs. And so everyone wants the fastball. Like, let's have fun. It looks good. Let's do what but most of the time you're going to see a curveball, and that doesn't mean you're out of the game. It just means you need a different approach.
I think that's a super powerful point to outline, because what you're talking about while we're talking about cancer, it's so translatable to leadership and just human connection. I find that when we are vulnerable in, the right spaces, I'm not saying go and necessarily pour your heart out, and it's not right on social media in some contexts, but I think people do respond and people want to help. I think deep down, I think humanity is really good and they do want to support people when they can. And I feel like that can be applied in business, that can be applied in cancer, that can be applied in, just
everything,
family situations, everything. And I think, I don't know, in our society, we've sort of have social media and we're sort of less connected, but we are also have the opportunity to connect more on a larger scale. So it's interesting observing that as well. But I feel like that connection piece is such a powerful thing and not to discount it.
Well, and one of the things about curveballs, whether they are business, life, medical, they force you to pause. They just do, because you look at them and go, oh my God, what's that? Right? That's the reaction. Like, ooh. But they force you to pause. And it's in the pause that are the opportunities for the kind of connection you're talking about. We can't connect when we're going all the time. We have to stop.
Yep. I just felt like giving you a big high five. Yes, you're right. And I think if I reflect on the times in my life where I have been thrown a curveball, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be health related. I notice how I pause and I really become very still and I really dig deep. Sometimes I have to dig deeper than other times to find, the next path forward. And it's interesting, I think, if we can practice doing that without there needing to be a curveball in front of us as well, by not necessarily going a million miles an hour. Yes, sometimes life requires us to move faster than other times, but I think the pause and the self-reflection outside of times of crisis is super valuable as well.
I agree. And it's funny you talk about practice. One of the things I built as I started working with my clients, and then I started building a course for people who want a self-guided journey through it, is I built a custom GPT called Mental Baseball for Leaders. And basically the way it works is you go onto this thing, and it's available to people like clients, course, whatever. But you go onto it and you say, I'm Monica. I run a personal branding business, and this is how many people I work with, and generate a curveball for me. And it does. And then it asks you with a prompt to craft your response. And it tells you how it's going to score it. It may even give you some tips.
Wow.
Then you do your response. You can speak it. You can write it. I don't care. It's going to give you, did you foul? Did you get a single, a double, or a home run? Those are the options. And then it's going to give you some ideas about how to improve it, right? Now, you could also say, this is a curveball I'm seeing, help me. But the idea here is, what if you took 5 minutes 3 times a week and just saw some curveballs? In sports, we practice before the games.
Yeah.
Even on game day, we practice before the game.
Mm.
But somehow in life, in leadership, we don't practice. So every time we see a curveball, it's in real time.
Mm.
Now, why was I good at the cancer curveball? Because I have seen it. It wasn't
Yeah.
coming at me, but I've seen it up close. So I was like, I know this one, right? But
not this one again.
I know. Honestly, I felt worse for my parents.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I can't believe they're going to have to go through this again with another child. Ugh.
Yeah.
The idea of mental baseball for leaders is to see some of the curveballs that you're likely to see and practice. And what we're doing when we do that, we're building some skills, but we're also writing into our frontal lobes. And if you think of it like a card catalog or the internet or whatever, when the curveball comes up and you're like, wait, I saw that one. Let's try this, right? Even if let's try this is, I'm going to need some other people's brains to help me figure this one out. Like, I didn't figure out how to treat my cancer. I figured out how to put together a team of people who would help me treat my cancer.
Yeah, totally. I think it's really nice that you also remind our listeners that, you don't necessarily use this approach and go at it all by yourself. It is about recognizing what you can do and the role that other people can play in supporting you through whatever it is.
Well, and in business, business is ultimately teams. There's very little you're ever going to do that's solo. And even if, let's say, it's your deliverable and the curveball showed up, ask for input, ask for guidance, ask for ideas. You're still going to do the work, but other people have probably seen curveballs like it. I even tell people when they get fired, I said, if you're going to work in the industry I worked in, tech, and you're going to be on the go-to-market side, you're going to get fired. Like, it's just part of your career trajectory.
Yeah.
So, talk to other people, but I like to reframe it saying, even if it was unexpected and unwelcome, you're now liberated to go find something that you're really good at and that's worth your time. Because we can't change what happened. We can learn from it. And in the learning, ask people like, well, what could I learn here? What could I do better next time?
Yeah.
What are the strengths you saw and what are the weaknesses? And don't learn with the intent to change their mind. You're not going to. Learn with the intent to grow so that the next time you're up at the plate, you've got some new muscles you can use.
That's beautiful. And I know our conversation is coming to a close, and I feel like that's such a powerful moment that we could close our conversation on. But I do want to ask you, is there anything that I feel like I haven't asked you that you really would like to share with our listeners before we do wrap up?
So I want to encourage people to reject the notion that leadership is somehow instinctive and everyone knows how to do it, or that leadership is something you're born with and only a few know how to do it. Just as you learned algebra, or you learned how to write, or maybe a foreign language, leadership is a learned skill, and it is one we are all well served to continuously invest in. However you do that, it could be reading, it could be talking to other people, it could be with a coach, it could be with courses. There's lots of ways. But over 60% of first-time leaders fail, and the average duration, tenure, for a CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, or Chief Marketing Officer in tech companies is 18 months. Neither of these are good. They're not good for the organization, and they're not good for the individual. When I was working in companies, when it was a good fit, and I had bad fits, but when it was a good fit, I was there 3 or 4 or 5 years, right? Because I continuously invest in how can I be a better leader? And as the team changes, either because people come and they go, or, the organization reorganizes, you've got to invest in your leadership because now you've got new people. So don't be lazy about your leadership. Be intentional. Create a plan for the rest of your life with clarity about how do I want to lead and where do I need to grow.
Beautiful. I think that's just almost gone full circle for us where we started. Thank you for sharing such beautiful insights, leadership wisdom, and also your personal story. I think that so many people will be able to draw out little nuggets and relate them to their own life. I think your story, we all have something we can draw inspiration and strength from.
Well, thank you. I'd like to say my story is unfortunately pretty common. And I just wanted to say on the cancer thing, I didn't ask this because I knew the answer. Most people say, what did I do wrong? So I want everyone to know nothing. You didn't cause your cancer. You have cells that ran amok and they got ahead of your immune system. And thank God we live in a time when it can be detected and it can be treated. And hopefully it's just a curveball.
Yeah.
I wish that to all of you.
So I'm going to wrap up our chat with the Leaders Lane Sprint. 4
Great.
quick fire questions for you. So the first one is, what's one of the best experiences that you've had in life?
Seeing my kids soar and succeed.
I love that. Tell me, what's one thing that you would like to do before you die?
My God, one, I want to see the Northern Lights, maybe even in like a snow hotel in Iceland, in Norway or Sweden or something. But I want to do that, and I want to do it without feeling cold, which I haven't figured out how to do.
Yeah, I don't know how that one's going to work, but, you know, maybe really big, thick jacket, lots of warm stuff.
I figure I'm going to have battery packs all over me, keeping me warm.
You know those little ice packs that you can snap and put in your gloves?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you'll have them. You could have them like all over your body.
Maybe I'll just make a shirt out of them.
Totally. Yeah, exactly right. And tell me, who or what brings out your best?
Slowing down. My best is when I take a moment and I think before I do. The way I deal with life's anxieties is I act, I get an action. Sometimes it's fire, ready, aim. So what brings out my best is to say, hold up, don't act. Just be with it for a moment, which is really hard for me, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, that's powerful. Okay, and my last question for today is, what did you enjoy most about this conversation?
I love that your values are on the tip of your tongue, that you knew exactly what you stand for. And when you see it, you light up and respond. I think that was really awesome.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'll actually just share. Those came to me at a time when, I don't know, I guess you could call it a curveball. It was many years ago when I first started my business. I just left the publishing company and I sat down and I went, what is it that I am doing here? What is it that I stand for? What direction do I want to move in? You know, and that's what came to me at the time. And they have been so clear for me, and they've been such a guiding light, if you want to say, ever since I've sort of come to bring them to light.
Well, it's obvious and they're compelling, and this has just been a delightful conversation. Thank you so much for having me on Leaders Lane.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you again. And I will put all of your links in the show notes. And I know you've been very generous to offer the listeners a 15-minute free training. So I will pop the link in the show notes for that as well. And yeah, thank you again. It's been a delight.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.